Silverbird News 24. We've had very interesting sessions before now, and during the week, the Gender-Based Violence, International Day of Gender-Based Violence was celebrated, and it's particular for me not just because I'm a woman, but because our mothers are women. We have sisters, we have children who are girls, and we've talked about this over and again, the fight for equality. Some people will argue that it's equity. Whatever it is, we humans have the right to live. We have the right for privileges. We have the right for advocacy. We have the right for fair hearing. Okay, so we have a guest to talk about gender-based violence, eliminating harmful practices against women by 2030. 2030, well, let's see if we can achieve that. Before I talk about our guest, we've had violence against women go beyond sexual violence. It has gone beyond physical violence. I hope you know about mental violence. That all we'll be talking about today and many more. Of course, we have Chioma Onyenucheya. I'm going to call it again. Chioma Onyenucheya Uko, a legal practitioner and a gender advocate. I wouldn't want to call her a feminist because she put up something before the show and I was like, yes, this is a woman advocate and a feminist. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, TJK. Glad to be here.
You're looking good. I'm not going to ask you how. Yes, you're looking good.
Whoa, I hope my blush is not showing.
Okay, all right. We've always had these times where we would celebrate women, and, you know, advocate for women. But for me, it is not just about the celebration and advocacy. It is about the implementation and actually accepting that women have a place. We are not, I don't like to put it that we are fighting for equality because, you know, some people will start saying, oh, if you people are fighting for equality, then wouldn't you be shortchanged if we give you what men can do? But I want you to, you know, actually bring it out. What do women want?
My sister, I'm not going to shy away from saying we demand equality because that's what it is. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says we're all equal, right? There should be no discrimination at all. So that presupposes that it realizes that we are all simply human, regardless of gender. And if that is the truth, it means that you should be afforded as much opportunities, as much rights as Musa, as Emeka, as Benga, as any other human, though they be male. Now, how can we do that? Women realize, and want the rest of society to realize, that unfortunately, because of certain parochial and, you know, backward traditional practices and, you know, prejudices against women, women are actually late starters into the game of power, governance, and politics. And to practically afford everybody a level playing ground, some level of equity must apply. Not equity in the sense of tokenism, not equity in the sense of, you know, let's just indulge them with something. No, equity in fairness, in the sense of, because they were not afforded as much opportunities as the other gender, now that we realize that we need to complement one another to ensure wholesome development for the society, we need to, you know, create some sort of incentive, some sort of enablements to quicken their stepping forward to the plate, to the table. And that's what equity is about. So equity is not intended to derogate from equality. And equality is nothing to shy away from. Because in equality, we are all able to bring forward our best. We are all able to, you know, give of ourselves, our resources, our know-how, our competencies, whatever they be, which are innate in all of us. So we're not going to, you know, shortchange one. In any case, who even gets shortchanged? I think that the more you keep women away from the decision table, the more you shortchange society.
Yes.
Because if you look at statistics world over, the countries that have more women participating in governance, are making landmark strides, particularly areas around social amenities and the things that directly impact humanity.
All right. Okay, now let's narrow it down to gender-based violence. It's a very complicated issue. Do you know why it is a complicated issue? I have handled 2 major cases of gender-based violence. One had to do with murder, and the other had to do with amputation. I'm going to show you that later on. I covered the story of somebody here in Abuja who murdered his partner for some certain reasons. She has been going through violence before, the murder eventually happened. And the second one was amputation. But at the end of the day, with all the fights and everything, it was coming from them for us to drop the case. So how do we pull through in these kind of cases? I'm sure that you would have experienced this. How are women going to be able not only to speak up, but to actually stay on that trail?
So one of the things you possibly didn't know about me, but which is easily one of the prominent things about me, is that I'm a family lawyer. And by virtue of that, I have done a lot and do a lot around, within the family law spectrum, including sexual and gender-based violence. And of course, mostly at the receiving end of these acts, heinous acts, are women and children. If you look at our realities, yes, we have some enabling laws to help curtail, to help curb, to help ensure that we eliminate all forms of violence, generally against persons. But implementation is still a big issue. So answering your question directly, for a victim who wants justice, chances are that when justice is protracted, when the process of obtaining justice is protracted, the victim may get weary. The victim may get intimidated. The victim may lose faith in the system. And any of this can, engender the victim withdrawing. And then, of course, there may be a lot of, inducements by the side. Because usually, when perpetrators are confronted with the enormity of their offenses and the likely punishment for those offenses, they begin to run helter-skelter. They begin to, pile blames on the devil who possibly was cruising somewhere and wasn't even involved in whatever it was they were doing. And then you see that they make offers, they make promises, they are willing to, settle and negotiate like as if it were a personal offense. Do you understand? But in reality, all forms of abuse, all forms of violence against women and children, and generally against persons, are not just personal offenses. They are offenses against the state. So while indeed it is an offense against a person, it is also an offense against the state and should not be so negotiated. But then, most of those victims are poor, they are probably literate, they're people mostly from the lower rung of the ladder. And then a 50,000 naira offer, a 25,000 naira offer, a 100,000 naira offer sounds like a big deal. Do you understand? But they do not realize, and that is where enlightenment comes in, they do not realize that some of those things that they are trying to negotiate or are being offered by the side are things they can also get from the court. Because by the provisions of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, that's the VAP Act, the Act makes provisions for compensation from the courts. So which means that a victim can actually, plead the remedy, demand the remedy of compensation from the court, and it will be awarded in deserving cases. So I think that at the core of it, one, the slow pace of justice. The wheel grinds really slowly. That's the truth. Then the other thing is the uncertainty in the system, in the sense that it's difficult to say for a fact that because case A went this way, case B is likely to go this way. There is some unpredictability around things, as it were. Then again, you have the issue of, societal prejudices, stigmatization and the rest of them. So some victims don't even want people to hear that they have been so abused. So they'd rather, you know, keep it private because unfortunately, instead of shaming abusers, we've stigmatized victims, which is all shades of wrong. So that's another reason why victims may not want to, you know, follow through. And then again, I had spoken about inducements, you know, because of financial challenges, some of them are willing, you know, to consider offers that are made. And then again, we do not have adequate victim protection mechanisms in place. So sometimes, after we've done all the interviewing, all the, you know, filing of the cases and what have you, everybody goes home. There isn't quite a structure to ensure that the victim is safe. There's no surveillance, nothing.
It exposes the
Do you
victim,
understand?
yeah.
So sometimes the victim doesn't want to walk that journey by herself. You know, her family may not be able to give her the shield that she deserves, and she would rather just opt out of it. And I'm saying she because we're discussing women.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you for balancing it, because at the point I wanted to say, even educated and financially capable women go through these violence.
Oh, sure.
Or you balanced it saying society. So that means that society has a greater role to play in that effect, because if the home is okay, they applaud women. If it is bad, they blame it on women. If anything goes wrong, they're always blaming it on women. Why are you staying put in an abusive marriage? She lives in an abusive marriage. Oh, you see, you had wanted to stay alone right from time. Okay, so let's delve into cultural harmful practices. There are a lot of cultural harmful practices currently taking place. I know of friends who have been circumcised, and sadly, it is still going on. Let's not even talk about tribal marks. Let's not talk about the other ones where a woman loses her husband and she'll be made to actually, you know, do some cultural practices that are unheard of, or betrothed to one of the siblings of. But a lot of these are ongoing in silence, you know, and some women actually accept it as norm. How do you think that this can be eradicated? You know, the federal government would have done a lot, but it's still going on right now.
So some of the ways to eradicate those things we're already doing. But we can never do too much until we see the results that we desire, right? Of course, enacting appropriate laws to ensure that you know, people are deterred from contemplating those abuses, and then that abusers are punished. We have some of them. We have the VAP Act, we have the Child Rights Act. And when we talk about harmful traditional practices, we're not even going to allow any of them fall off the plate. We may not be able to focus on all at once, but each is as heinous, as degrading, as abusive as the other. Under the VAP Act, the law penalizes all forms of harmful traditional practices. Some of them are expressly mentioned. Some are not. But then, of course, within context, they can all be subsumed. And then under the Child Rights Act, most of those harmful practices are also listed, including the birthmarks you mentioned. Some people, because they are not quite enlightened, do not realize. But then again, the principle of law, ignorance is not an excuse. So we owe a duty to continue to enlighten the public, to educate them on the provisions of law and the implications of some of these acts. When you make a woman go through, you know, psychological abuse, and sometimes physical, emotional, financial, consider all of those, because she has lost a husband, it beggars belief. Because you're wondering, any right-thinking person should empathize with this person as, you know, a victim of circumstance, a victim of fate. I doubt anybody would want to lose their loved ones, more so a husband. And then that happens. Instead of empathizing with that person, society turns around to now, you know. So what I'm saying in effect is that enacting the right laws, yes, that's happening. More can be done. Ensuring that we continue to do enlightenment and sensitization, which is part of what you're doing here, having us have this conversation. Take it into the grassroots. Take it into the rural communities. Because, yes, we haven't quite achieved, maximum enlightenment within the cosmopolitan areas. But then again, more work needs to happen in the Hitherlands. So we need to take the message there in simple language, in vernacular, in our different, ethnic languages, so that people understand. It may appear that it's taking a while, but I doubt there is any good thing that came by chance.
Yeah.
Even the struggle for independence wasn't a stroll in the park. Do you understand?
Yes.
It took concerted effort for that to happen over a duration. So we're also doing that around the issues of ensuring that we attain, goal 5 of the SDGs, being gender equality and then the empowerment of women and girls. So as we do that, we need to begin to draw consciousness around the issues, around the dangers, around the implications, and of course the benefits that will come by ensuring that these things are done. Then of course, the thing about mindset, about beliefs, about orientation, we must do a deliberate reorientation. Yes. Many people think that certain things are masculine, certain things are feminine, certain things, when you talk about leadership, when you talk about politics, some people think that woman should be taking care of her children. What is she doing there? And you forget that what happens at the decision table impacts on the quality of life those children you want her to take care of will enjoy. It affects them. When her children sit at home because of strike, she's affected. When her children do not have access to good Medicare, she's affected. When she cannot access, hygienic water to fend for her family, she's affected. And all of these things are formulated at the decision table. So she must get involved because it affects her. So we need to do a deliberate reorientation where we realize that each of us, regardless of gender, has the capacity and should enjoy the right to be part of decision making.
All right, thank you. Lastly, we'll take this one very quickly. Your word for women who are still staying put in abusive union, relationship, marriages, or friendship, and to also note that it may not be only physical violence, but emotional and psychological violence. What advice do you have for them who still stay put for some reasons?
The first will be that they need to understand what violence is. Violence, as had been said by Tinuke, is not only physical. Violence can be economical because some people force their partners or spouses or other dependents to be solely dependent on them. They don't want you to earn a means of livelihood because they realize that if you do, you have a better quality of life, and they don't want that. They want to keep that person subjugated, if you know what I mean. That's violence. It could be emotional. It could be verbal. And that's one of the ways where it's not quite, there are no gender specificity really in some of these forms of violence. But then again, some of them, because women and children are more vulnerable, are more inflicted on women and girls. Then we need to realize what violence is, identify it when it's happening, not make excuses for violence. Do not excuse the acts of violence a loved one or anybody inflicts on you. Don't try to imagine that I must have provoked him, or he didn't know what he was doing. He actually is remorseful, he loves me. If he or she loved you enough, he's not likely to want to hurt you or harm you. Then again, there is help available. One of the ways you can get help will be to go to FIDA, International Federation of Women Lawyers, and good enough, FIDA has branches in the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT, and even multiple branches in some states. So FIDA is one of such organizations that I know will give you a ready listening ear and help you pursue the cause of justice. Then, of course, for those in the FCT, the NAPTIP is there because that's the agency of government mandated with ensuring the implementation of the VAP Act. They are available to lend support in, and protection in cases of abuse and violence. Then the Nigerian Police, National Human Rights Commission, any of those places. But please speak out. Do not be shy. Do not feel ashamed when you suffer any form of abuse. You are not the guilty one. The offender, the abuser, is the guilty one and should be the one suffering the shame. Let's stop the stigmatization. Let us lend a listening ear. Let us stop, doubting and blaming victims of abuse, of violence. It can actually be anybody. It can be any of us. There are many more things I can say. I don't know if I have time to
Thank you
continue.
very much. I know that you are a roller coaster, you're a moving train. And let me just quickly hint to you, I saw what you did at the National Assembly when we went to, you know, cover that affirmation. She's fire. Forget this mellowing that she's doing here. And I still have clips of that. So
Look at that.
thank you so much,
Thank you,
Chioma Unyenuche Ya Uko,
Yes,
for
ma'am.
coming on the show, legal practitioner and member feeder. Oh, I got that right.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us on News Up Extra. We're talking about gender-based violence, eliminating harmful practices against women by 2030. Hopefully, it will be achieved before 2030. Okay, I am Atinuke Tokura. Thanks for staying tuned. Join us same time next week, and also join News Up on Monday on Silverbird Television. Thank you, and do have a pleasant weekend.